I'm Caleb. I was 15 when the night opened its mouth and tried to swallow me whole in Kentucky's Daniel Boone National Forest. If you're hearing this, it's because I carried a story longer than I carried fear. 10 years later, I'm still not sure which weighs more. People always ask me to start with the monster. I won't. I'll start with the dogs.
Jake was a coonhound with a church bell voice and old scars that mapped every bad choice I ever made and he ever fixed. Bo was a new pup, all knees and bright eyes that hadn't learned what the world does to bright things. Those two were the kind of friends that make you cocky enough to walk into dark places and call it a plan.
It was October, the kind that smells like sap and smoke, no moon. The woods were a sieve of silhouettes and cold, and the creek kept speaking a language you can only hear if you've walked there since you were small. Grandpa was too old to hunt, but too stubborn to stay home. He waited in his rusted Ford on the logging road with the cab light on, radio in the cup holder hissing like a sleepy snake. He didn't say much, unless saying much could save your life.
I clipped the GPS collars on the dogs and watched the tiny red lights blink like small, calm hearts. "Work it, boys," I whispered, because some prayers don't need saints. The collars started pinging, Jake steady and Bo frantic. Then the sound of them was swallowed by briars and black trees, and the kind of fog that seems to come from the ground up, not the sky down. Grandpa's voice came through my radio, clear enough to land planes. "You're on the North Fork?"
Are you on the North Path? Copy.
Mark your steps. Coyote's been thick since the storm.
That's what he said out loud. What he meant was, don't forget which way home is. The night took shape around me. Every twig snap felt like a syllable. Jake's voice rolled through the holler, deep and certain, and Bo's pinned the sound to a point like push pins in a map. I felt good, alive, useful the way you feel when the world is big, but your job is small and sharp. The argument started far off, coyotes fussing like kids in the grocery aisle.
Sharp, mean laughter echoing between trunks. Then the tone shifted, tightened, from jokes to pleading. The pack's chorus pinched into one thread and snapped.
Bo screamed. I've cleaned fish that thrashed themselves empty and watched a deer try to run on a broken leg. This wasn't that. This was the sound of a small thing discovering truth in one terrible lesson. I ran before the thought finished forming.
The flashlight on my chest jittered in wild arcs. Thorns caught my jeans. My breath lived inside the hood of my jacket like its own creature. "Stay in the light," Grandpa said on the radio, calm as a barn wall. "Mark the way you came." But something else marked me first. A smell, like copper pennies in your teeth, wet fur, and a doghouse left uncleaned for a year. The scent came ahead of me, around a blown-down oak rotting into a half-bridge. I heard breath, thick and wet, and the rip-worry of teeth working bone.
I called, Bo, then silence. My beam found the shape of a rib cage, too long, too wrong. The pail of a coyote's side dangling like a butcher's display. For a heartbeat, I tried to dress the picture in anything my brain could live with. Big stray, oversized stray, neighborhood legend with rabies. Then it looked at me.
You can say its eyes were yellow, or amber, or lantern light, and you'd be telling only the smallest truth. What I saw wasn't a color.
It was cognition. The look you give a tool when you decide how to use it. Look an old wolf might give a rifle it's learned to read. It eased its jaws off the rib cage. Sinew stretched and snapped. On all fours, it was taller than the hood of Grandpa's truck. It eased its jaws off the rib cage. Then the rules we passed between camps like heirlooms broke in half. It stood up. Bones rolled into the wrong shape. Hips climbed into place with a damp, practiced certainty. The chest was deep. I can still smell it sometimes. The forelimbs too long, a darker ruff mantling its shoulders like a cape. Its head was a long triangle of hunger that knew my name.
We balanced there, two lives on a narrow beam. If I breathed wrong, I'd fall.
A roar hit the clearing that belonged to both of us. Jake's, but also something inside me that remembered being 5 when he took a copperhead bite meant for my bare foot.
He crashed in from the right like a wrecking ball aimed at a knee. Hounds don't read books, but they know how to break joints. It worked. The thing snarled, metal rasped through a factory, and swung, scooping Jake at the midsection the way you'd pluck a duffel bag, and threw him into the trees. The crash that followed was a roll call of the woods. Saplings breaking, brush tearing, a body meeting a trunk.
Run! Grandpa said. So I did. Roots reached up like hands. The hillside tried to collapse me into it. I didn't feel any of it. Behind me, I heard Jake again, impossibly, launching with all heart. Heart is meat.
The sounds that followed will always live in the room behind my ribs. Tearing, fast, purposeful, bones like green sticks snapping, a wet mulch of noise. I kept moving because the only choice that wasn't dying was forward. I busted into a broom sedge field, a thin scar of old pasture, and tripped on the lip of a ditch, folding myself into the ground. Stars spun. The world swam back just in time for black to fall on me like a roof. The stink was a wall. Claws raked dirt by my boots. My headlamp slid a pale blade of light over saliva threaded between teeth, trembling with breath. A noise climbed out of me that I didn't recognize as mine. The night broke. White beams lanced in from the ridge like spears thrown by gods. Not flashlights, edged light, squared by something you could measure. The creature flinched, not from pain but surprise, and I heard a voice bark a crisp syllable that wasn't English. Word or code, I don't know. Then the field filled with blue-white bolts that sounded like the air itself was being ripped open and zipped shut. The energy didn't punch like bullets. It grabbed. Each strike made the thing's limbs stutter, a marionette being tugged against its own dance. Men slid down the ridge in black on black, silhouettes broken by paneling and plates. Their suits were matte, eating light. They moved like a choreographed memory.
For a heartbeat, I thought they were some federal team I'd heard rumors about. New gear, big budget. Then one turned and the emblem on his chest caught my eye. A red skull in a spoked ring. Simple as a warning sign, and lit from within. They didn't aim to shred. They bracketed, measured, adjusted. Too advanced with something between a riot shield and a door, edges humming. They pressed the shimmering plates to corral the creature like cowboys with a fence that hummed. The Dogman vaulted clean over them, landed between me and their beams, and for an instant, a row of visors reflected my own skull. Every barrel twitched a hair. "Hold!" someone snapped. I didn't move. Sometimes being nobody is your best shape. The storm resumed. Beams stitched up its flank, across its jaw. A net launcher coughed a cone of glowing filaments that hissed when they touched bark and fur. The Dogman tore free and ran. I ran too. We became a three-part chase. Me in front because terror is quick, it in the middle because hunger is quicker, the men behind because training is fastest when it's done this 100 times in the dark. The forest was a tunnel carved by breathing. I cut toward the fire road, the one line that could take me home. The Dogman cut me off in arcs that made no sense until I realized it was angling me, keeping me between itself and the beams. It was hunting two ways at once. "Break right," a voice boomed, magnified by something on a collar. I crashed through laurel and slid into a ravine braced with roots and rocks slick as truth. The Dogman paced the lip like it was doing the math on the men's geometry. The blue net hung in the dark like a storm waiting to drop.
Then I heard it. Rotor wash. Low, heavy, blending with the hills. A black helicopter running dark. Only a hint of bulk against a starless patch of sky.
4 black suits hammered metal cylinders into the ridge opposite.
They flared, and then didn't flare. The air between them shimmered into a wall that made the leaves buzz. The Dogman recoiled, like from flame that didn't burn, but promised to. A gloved hand reached down.
"You're not our target. Get small. Don't run uphill into crossfire."
One broke formation, half step out. The Dogman saw the hole and took it. It hit him like a truck hits a mailbox. Armor held, mostly. Body didn't. He pinwheeled into a trunk with a furniture-breaking sound. 2 suits pivoted, too slow. The thing was on them, arms scissoring, claws scraping, teeth finding a forearm plate and shaking like a terrier worries a rope. The voice in the comms didn't change tone, but the cadence did. Faster words, tighter rhythm. Downdraft flattened weeds, a white circle stabbed down, scraping color off everything. Under it, the Dogman was suddenly anatomical, obscene, a study in muscles working with machine precision.
The helicopter hovered lower, and something unfolded from its underbelly like a predatory bloom. A pulse of red light dropped from the craft. Not a beam, but a woven lattice of energy lines, each thread shimmering like molten wire. The net hit with a whip-crack hiss, spreading wide before collapsing tight around the creature. At every intersection, rods fired downward from the net's edges, slamming into the soil like driven stakes. The ground spat dirt and sparks.
The web tightened until the Dogman's limbs were cinched flat to the ravine floor.
Muscles quivering against the restraint. He thrashed once,
Hard enough to bow the net, but the rods dug deeper.
fusing with rock. The red lattice pulsed, its light sinking to the helicopter's stuttering heartbeat overhead. The creature's roar turned into a broken modulation between animal and static,
Energy burned through the net, pinning him so close to the earth.
that even breath seemed rational.
Subdue confirmed.
A voice said over the comms.
While they worked, my mind did a stupid human thing. It made a small space where Jake would trot from the trees. Ears up, face bloody but shining because stories square debts when real life doesn't.
Instead, men lifted the Dogman, webbed and trussed, onto a cradle that unfolded from nowhere. Bands tightened to the exact point before Boone complains. I crawled from the roots, dizzy with anger. A hand slammed my shoulder back down.
Stay.
Two suits knelt by their fallen teammate. The medic's hands moved with clockwork grace. A wash of soft blue from an open case turned the man's face aquarium pale.
Stabilize
He
him.
coughed. He breathed. The medic's tiny
Then
nod
burn
said,
sight.
"Enough for now." The leader, the voice that never moved, touched his collar like the sky had spoken into his ear. The red skull on his chest glowed steady as a stoplight. The helicopter hovered, belly open, winch lowered like a tongue.
What about the kid? Saw the op. Options. Disappear him.
One of them said,
He knows details. We've got rooms.
"Bag him. We have got room." I can still remember those exact words they said. Something small and foolish stood up inside me. "I'm going to my grandfather," I said, and then it was silent. The kind you could measure weight inside. The leader listened to his cloud. The skull on his chest kept burning rain bright. Then his visor turned to me and he gave a single nod.
Let him go. Are you sure? Command is sure.
Stay low. Avoid the light.
I climbed. The field had become a surgery stage. Net sparking, cradle winching, helicopter snarling at gravity. As I reached the ridge, one suit stood a little back, visor tilted like a question I couldn't hear. My mouth wanted to ask why a skull, why red, why any of it. Instead, everything brave in me took a step back and let my legs run. Grandpa was exactly where he'd promised he'd always be, if I made it back. Passenger door open, cab light on, hand on the gear shift.
Get inside now!
We drove a quarter mile in a silence that wasn't empty.
What happened?
I told him in the language our family uses when big things get too big, through the dogs.
Jake bought me time. He didn't make it.
Grandpa's knuckles went white on the wheel. He nodded once like a judge accepting the verdict he had expected.
And Bo?
At the house, I showered until the water went thin and mean. In the mirror, a boy older than me looked back. My clothes smelled like the creek and battery acid. Every time I closed my eyes, the field lit again, and the skulls glowed, and the air sang. Under it, behind it, through it. I kept hearing that wet mulch of sound I've spent years trying not to hear. The next days came in clumps, like wet leaves stuck together. People asked if I was okay, the way people ask when they're counting how much of the answer they can carry. I learned to say, "We lost a dog," and leave the room that sentence didn't enter locked. I kept thinking about timing, how the beams arrived exactly when the Dogman did, how the men moved like the night was a rehearsal. I went back to the field with Grandpa weeks later. We didn't hunt. We walked lines. The broom sedge held marks no wind could make. A rectangle in the grass where the cradle had rested. Faces cut in brush that had already started growing camouflage back over itself. We found a thread of filament fused to a sapling like a spider tried welding. When I bent it, it snapped with a blue spark that made my fillings sing.
Not ours.
Grandpa said, flat as a fact he'd known longer than me.
You think they used me as bait?
Who are they? He didn't answer straight.
He looked past me to the ridge where the first spears of light had pierced fog.
And something old in his shoulders set down a load.
People around here got names for shadows. Sometimes those names are warnings. Sometimes they're the only way to talk about things that don't want hearing.
I didn't say the name then. I say it now. The Phantom Unit.
Black budget. Red skulls lit from within.
Energy that grabs instead of kills.
Why me? Why mercy? Why a story is sometimes better than a body?
Maybe they needed a legend. Maybe fear does more work than silence.
Maybe paperwork is heavier than conscience. I don't hunt those ridges anymore. I won't pretend it's because I grew up and out of it. I stopped because every coyote argument in the holler sounds like a test I'm failing. Because sometimes, late, the wind brings a smell that doesn't belong to any dog I've owned.
My porch light feels like a stage light.
And I can feel, like pressure on my skin, a visor turned my way. I see Red Skull Hunters accounts pop up on X sometimes. They vanish fast. Posts get eaten. Chopper at tree line. No running lights. Filaments tangled in oak bark. Comments full of jokes until the comments go quiet. Folks around here have names for shadows. They're getting better at using them in the daylight. If you're watching this for thrills, I can't help you. If you're watching because you think you saw something and want someone to tell you you didn't, I can't do that either. I can tell you that Jake died buying me seconds, that the night broke into beams and blue nets, that men with red skulls hunted a thing that hunts, that they spoke about my life like a note on a clipboard, disappear him, take him, and then decided a kid with a voice wasn't as dangerous as a kid in a crate. I can tell you this too. If the night breaks for you out there, if the beams come and the air sings and the woods suddenly feel like a room that just remembered you were in it, don't run toward or away. Get small. Mark where you stand. Remember what you learn.
Some hunts aren't about game at all. They're about bait.
And sometimes the only reason you're still breathing is because someone with a red skull on his chest decided a story was a cleaner ending than a grave.